Story 1. My parents took me out of school in 7th grade for vacation. I asked all my teachers for work to take with me. When we returned after 2 weeks, I turned in my completed assignments. However, mid-quarter progress reports were issued just before we returned, and my grades were poor because I was missing 2 weeks of homework, which I had since submitted. I was grounded until the next report card, which had all A's except for science. My father was very strict. Story 2. 6th grade, last concert of the year. I have a huge solo. I told my mom that I had a note to see the counselor the next day, moving into junior high stuff. She completely misunderstood what I had said, thought it was for her, and beat me from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet with one of those little plastic belts that were popular at the time. Welts everywhere. Then I had to get changed into my choir clothes and go sing. I begged one of the teachers to let me go to my classroom and grab my homework from my desk. They obliged, and I grabbed a textbook and shoved a note inside it. Came home and showed my mom the note, explaining it was for me and not her. All she said was that I needed to be more clear when I was talking to her. All these years later, when we were still talking, she said something like, "You will never forgive me for that, will you?" And I told her, "Nope." Story 3. When I did not get anything to eat for dinner because there were 10 of us and nothing was left after everyone else took food. If I said anything about being hungry because I had no food, my mother would become angry. She would scream at me and say I was a liar. Then, as punishment, she would deprive me of any food and demand I stay in my room, or I would get a beating. So, I would go days without eating because the punishment for not getting dinner and speaking up was not getting dinner for a few more days. Having a mother who lies more than I do calling me a liar is pretty ridiculous. If I speak about her memory, it will not be to say she was a great mother. Story 4. When I was very young, my father ran a basin of water and shoved my head into it repeatedly while screaming at me. It was not incredibly violent, but it was traumatizing. However, I went on to become a competitive swimmer, learning to hold my breath early in life. Story 5. I was about 12 years old and in the hospital. The doctor added a new medication. I soon complained of a racing heart rate and chest pain. Staff wheeled me to the emergency room to get checked, but by then it had passed. As punishment for lying, I was physically held down while they forcefully medicated me. Years later, I found that this medication has a warning for a common serious side effect of causing rapid heart rate and arrhythmias. In some individuals, these heart issues can be permanent. As an adult, I have arrhythmias among other cardiac issues. Story 6. Silent treatment is being ignored by everyone in the family for a period of time because you were lying and did not admit to it. Until you decide to speak the truth, no one wants to hear you. After days, it turned out it was my cousin who did the thing. I never received an apology but ended up developing avoidant attachment issues that I have no idea how to cure. Story 7. I was grounded from 7th to 9th grade. No television or video games because my teacher told my parents I was stupid. I was actually dyslexic and had above average intelligence. Story 8. They took the batteries out of my Game Boy, not the Game Boy itself, so I could still look at it and suffer. Story 9. Being forced to watch my mother figure out text messaging on her new smartphone. One painstaking press at a time. Story 10. I came from an abusive household, so it is a toss-up between being burned with cigarettes, starved for days, pushed down a flight of stairs, having my head kicked into a wall, hit with a phone receiver, hit with a plate, or being picked up by my hair so they could reach my face without bending over. Story 11. Man, I don't have the greatest relationship with my mother, but this post makes it look like I have the best mom in the world. Sorry to everyone who has been abused. Story 12. I got caught swearing once and was forced to eat soap. I was 12 years old at the time and still remember it. Good times. I had no idea there would be a legion of other people who went through the same thing. I noticed some people mentioned liquid soap. I wish I had been given that option. I was quite a stubborn kid, and when my mom held it out, I knew what was coming, so I just bit it in half and started chewing. At least I got to watch her freak out as her firstborn started chewing a bar of Coast soap like it was bubblegum. Even after all these years, I remember it was stuck in my gums for a few hours and I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. I also now understand why I left right after I turned 18 and never came back. It is what it is. Coast Soap. The Eye Opener. Story 13. I once caught a chest cold when I was about 10, but after a few days I didn't get better. I got worse. It reached the point where I could barely breathe. My mom insisted I was just lacking some vitamins, so she made me take massive calcium and vitamin C pills. I still didn't improve. Things progressively got worse until the school principal called her and said, "Take your daughter to the doctor." The threat of looking bad in front of someone in authority scared her, so she did. Turned out I had developed asthma, and my blood oxygen levels were around 86%. They gave me a rescue inhaler, but she wouldn't let me use it until we got home. First, we had to order a pizza and wait for it to be ready. I remember fading in and out of consciousness on the way home. Finally, she read the paper and I got to use the inhaler. It was like the clouds opened up. I could breathe. It took about 6 months of serious treatment to get my lungs back to something resembling normal. She still insists. It wasn't that bad. Story 14. I went to a party at age 15 where there was alcohol. I thought it was best to leave since I did not want to get in trouble. When I got home, I told my parents, but they accused me of drinking, being drunk, and being high. I was grounded for 3 months, and they reported the party, so all my friends and their parents got in trouble. Safe to say, I did not have any friends after that, nor was I invited to any future events. Story 15. My mom's, "I'm a martyr and you are a thankless, clueless, incapable child who doesn't appreciate me" lecture I got after the spanking. The spanking took 30 seconds. The lecture took at least 5 minutes. I could recite it by heart by the time I was 10. Story 16. There are many things to choose from: being made to sleep in the garage, being banned from being part of the family, eating meals alone after everyone was asleep, not allowed to speak to or make eye contact with anyone, not allowed to leave my room except for school and the bathroom, hair cut to chin length because I had anxiety and would chew my hair, punched in my 7-year-old face, accidentally breaking my nose because I was fooling around late at night when my cousin slept over, grounded for more than 2 weeks because a parent threw a knife that went into their new expensive couch, frustrated by unsuccessful attempts to catch and stab me, hit in the back with a whole frozen chicken because I was 10 minutes late getting home, banned from showering or bathing completely, left alone in a room for so long as punishment that my parent forgot me and went home, excluded from a 2-month international family holiday for talking back. Guess who was the only half-sibling in a family with both a resentful parent and an abusive step-parent? Though I was always well-dressed and made to look presentable to maintain our wholesome middle-class life. Years later, my mother apologized, explaining she had tried to break me with increasingly extreme punishment because I did not complain or cry when punished. I just accepted it, which she found unsatisfying. Story 17. My dad gave me taps. He is 6 feet 5 inches tall and used a fraction of his strength to hit me, and it hurt a lot. I will never raise a hand to my children because he insists to this day that it was not a full smack, but we simply do not know our own strength as adults compared to a child's pain tolerance. I knew my boyfriend was going to be my husband when we talked about discipline. He had a similar experience and also stated he would never hit his children because it harms them mentally, and I agree. Story 18. I got sent to my room, and then 10 minutes later one of my parents would come talk to me about what I did wrong, and all was good. Perks of being an only child, I guess. Story 19. I told my parents I was very depressed one time, and they thought I just wanted attention. To teach me a lesson, they took away my phone because I wasn't allowed to call anyone and took my car keys so I couldn't see anyone or go anywhere. I sat in my room for days and they didn't care if I ate. They barely checked on me and I almost killed myself. Story 20. For my 12th birthday, my parents got me a television for my bedroom, complete with cable and even music television. In the 1980s, a 12-year-old having their own television in their bedroom was a big deal. You were the talk of the block if you had your own bedroom television. Then I got some bad grades, and they took my television away and locked it in the garage. Normally, I could just beg and harass them, and they would give it back in a few days. Not this time. They held firm, and I had to go an entire 9 weeks without my television until report cards came out again. It did work, though. I did bring my grades up, so I guess it was an effective punishment. That is really the only punishment that still stands out today as both extremely painful and effective. Story 21. Being grabbed by my mother's partner and shoved into a freezing cold shower, fully clothed. I still do not know what I did. Story 22. My mom would lock me in a room for hours on end. No food, water, or bathroom, and nothing for me to do in there at all. If I cried too loudly or had an accident because I couldn't hold it any longer, she would come in and beat me. Eventually, as I got older, I learned to brace the door so she could not come in. I would often run into the room if I knew she was going to skip the whole process and outright beat me for something. I would sit with my back against the door and use all my strength to push my feet against the dresser inside, which worked pretty well considering it was a 45-year-old against a 10-year-old. This started when I was a toddler and continued until I was 12 and she abandoned me. Unfortunately, the door was slatted like a closet door. A few times she would force her hands through the slats and rip my hair to distract me enough to break in. That only taught me to lean far enough forward so she could not reach my head. But that led to her grabbing knives and other long, sharp objects and stabbing me where my back was touching the door. She never made me bleed, but I often had long, open scrapes down my back. Story 23. I once had to stay inside for a whole week of my summer holiday because my brother would not admit to breaking an old chair. These days, kids might not think that is so bad, but watching my friends ride their bikes up in the hills, go swimming in the stream, or go golfing was hell. One of my friends even pleaded with my mother. Meanwhile, my goth brother thought nothing of it as he was focused on playing guitar and music at that time. Story 24. Getting grounded for the entire summer. No television, no going out, just chores and boredom. Felt like a lifetime back then. Story 25. Looking back on it, it's bizarre, but my dad felt inclined to make a whipping strap from one of his old belts. He carved it down to create a handle for better grip and to avoid hitting himself. I remember it existing as early as when I was 3 years old. I have a sister who is 3 years older than me, and now I can't help but wonder why a grown man needed a custom-made leather strap for two very little girls. The part that made contact with our bare behinds, yes, we had to pull our pants and underwear down, was the original holes to cause extra sting. It was incredibly painful when a 6-foot man hit our backsides with full strength. The pain would knock the air right out of us, and we would hyperventilate. It left horrible marks, but we were taught the importance of extreme modesty, so no one ever saw them. Our mother would sometimes say, "Honey, do you think maybe you spanked them too hard?" Sometimes she didn't care because we deserved it. It wasn't spanking, and it was definitely too hard. We were then forced to kiss and hug him afterward. Story 26. I was beaten with a board about half an inch thick with a handle, starting around age 4 or 5, because I had to learn a lesson. My butt would be black and purple for days, making it difficult to sit down in school. I would just get into more trouble. It was not just me. My father was an awful person and he abused my entire family. Story 27. My mentally ill mother broke her hand while beating us once. I cannot say that was the most painful experience, but it was definitely the most memorable. Story 28. Anytime my father saw me hanging out reading a book, he would find a chore for me to do. I started hiding down at the creek with a book and some snacks all day. I still dislike him. Story 29. My stepdad would make me write out whatever I did wrong 1,000 times or fill a notebook. I will not lie. 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 It was a tough break when art was my passion, but my dominant wrist is now damaged from it, and I deal with carpal tunnel pain daily. Story 30. Not from my parents, but from my older sister who used to babysit me. Drinking a cup of vinegar and then being locked in the attic. She was not a nice person. Story 31. My mom didn't yell. She would just get real quiet and say, "I'm not angry, just disappointed." That hit harder than any spanking ever could. Story 32. Very close joint first between a belt or kettle cable beating or being kicked out for a couple of nights. Story 33. being locked up in the basement and not allowed to come up to use the bathroom or eat until my ex-stepfather thought I had learned my lesson. I forgot to clean up a mess one night before I fell asleep. I was around 10 years old. It happened a few times, and I absolutely hate being in any type of basement now. I also hate being in a room where the door can lock from the outside. I need to make sure I have a way to get out at all times. Story 34. When I was about 12, my parents found out I had looked at pornography. We were an evangelical family, so they were very upset. My dad picked me up from a sleepover, told the parents about it, and drove me home in 15 minutes of silence. They made me tell my sisters and my mom and said they would never look at me the same way. They said I had ruined my life and no woman would ever want to be with me. He added that he was at least glad I was not gay, since, according to him, it was all about women. They then told all my friends' parents and everyone in the church. They forced me to go to counseling with one of my dad's friends and made me use what little money I had. Money I earned or received for my birthday, to pay for counseling. My mom sat in on some sessions and asked if I was deranged or if there was any hope. She aired every wrong I had done before I even had a chance to talk. They told my sisters I would have to hit rock bottom and probably be homeless and on drugs before my life would change. They interfered with several of my friendships and considered sending me to military school. All this happened because I had looked at pornography. I made a plan to kill myself that year because I believed them when they said no one would love me. Now they do not get to talk with any of their children or grandchildren, so I hope that keeps them warm at night. Story 35. I was about 11 or 12 years old, and my sister was 1 year younger. Our family was driving home from our grandparents' house. I was promised that we would stop at the store so I could buy a certain chocolate as a little treat. My sister had fallen asleep and rested her head on my shoulder, which was quite unpleasant because I couldn't move into a comfortable position. When we were 2 minutes from the store and 1 hour into our drive home, I had to adjust my shoulder. This woke my sister up angry, and she smacked me in the face. I pushed her away, not hard, and my parents yelled at me. "That's it. We're going directly home. No chocolate." I still remember the absolute injustice of being punished for doing nothing. It still boils my blood thinking about it. Story 36. Worst, as in lasting consequences. I was 15 or 16, and my father had remarried a woman who was a horrible stepmother. I cannot really remember what led up to it, but I am fairly certain it was because I was standing up for myself over something trivial. At the time, I was playing in a band sponsored by the city where I live. As punishment, she refused to let me go to rehearsals regularly. It got to the point where I was kicked out, despite it not being my fault, and I was told I could never play for them again. I think she knew that her usual punishments would not work on me, so she kept me from going to screw me over. I saw her again when I was 19 or 20, after she and my father divorced. She tried to be nice and cordial, but I called her a fat toad and gave her the finger. I never saw her again. I hope she just hopped off to some swamp, never to be seen again. Story 37. I do not know. My mother made us get very involved with sports to the point that we did not do anything on weeknights except practice for those sports, and weekends were filled with practice or traveling for competitions. If we asked to do something on a weekend, we had a time slot for a few hours, and it was only one day. So, if we chose to hang out with a friend on Friday night until 9 o'clock, that was it for the whole weekend. No wonder we all went off the deep end when we turned 18, quit every sport, and I went to bars to party. I am fine now, but I missed out on some fun teen years. Story 38. If we cried, our mother would brandish a wooden spoon and shriek, "Do you want me to give you something to cry for?" We usually scattered because that spoon really hurt when she caught us. Story 39. I was terrified of making my father mad. I don't know why, because he never actually raised a hand to me, but he would yell so loud that spit would come out of his mouth, and it just terrified me. I think it was actually worse than getting hit. Story 40. Combining through these comments really reinforced my viewpoint that not everyone is cut out to be a parent. Story 41. Both my parents were teachers. I spent the entire 4 years of high school grounded for getting C grades on my report card. No homecomings, no prom, no summers playing with friends. They were shocked when I did not go to college. even when they told me they would disown me on graduation day if I did not go. I am now a 50-year-old man with an anxiety disorder so severe that I literally lost control of my bowels because I was too afraid to leave my room to go to the bathroom. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for instilling the importance of education in me. Story 42. My mother made me tell my Campfire Girls leader that I had to quit because I did not set the table for dinner. I was heartbroken and embarrassed. Story 43. Smashing my Xbox to bits with a baseball bat before slashing the curtains with a knife to prove a point that leaving my shoes by the front door was not acceptable. I was 8. Story 44. I don't remember what I did, but my dad hit me with a hardback Bible. It was not a regular book size either. It was a children's Bible, more of a picture book. It was wide and flat. He hit me with it, then threw it across the room while yelling at me. He was unstable when I was a child. Now he is nearing 70 and likes to reminisce about how good a childhood my sister and I had. I always correct him on that. Story 45. I was beaten until I had bruises and felt ashamed to go to school the next day because I was made fun of for them. Story 46. I've been kicked out of my home for crying. I had to stay out until I stopped crying. I was forced to sleep on the floor in my own home with only a sleeping bag in a different room from mine. I have been choked during an autistic meltdown. The amount of hardship I have lived through is so great that I cannot wish it on anyone, not even my sworn enemy. Story 47. On behalf of all East Asian children. 1. Pulling your earlobes. 2. Having to squat in a horse stance for prolonged periods. 3. Getting caned with a rattan feather duster. Story 48. Psychological torture. If you look up methods, my mother used most of those on me. Here's a list. Isolation and confinement. Sleep deprivation. Humiliation and degradation. Threats and fear tactics. Manipulation and deception. We lived in the country, so I would often spend weeks at a time just sitting home alone. The only times I was allowed out were to go to volleyball practice or attend something related to 4-H. Thank goodness I had an aunt who would visit and take me out. Otherwise, I was buried in books. I got a little freedom when I bought my own car. I had to clean the house daily. Not just dishes, but vacuuming, sweeping, dusting, laundry, decluttering, and so on. That did not include outdoor chores like feeding and caring for our animals. Sleep deprivation happened less often, but when she was really angry at me, it meant I worked chores until late, waking up at 5 a.m. or earlier with no naps. Sometimes she would burst into my room in the middle of the night just to check because she thought she heard something. At one point, they moved one of my sister's friends into our house because he had nowhere else to go, and I lost my room. I slept on a pile of clothes on the floor in my sister's room. Humiliation and degradation were common. She often humiliated me in public, making fun of me, telling untrue stories, or revealing secrets I thought were private. She found my hidden diary and used the things I wrote against me. Threats and fear were like living with a time bomb. I never knew what would set her off into a screaming fit, like a drill sergeant screaming in your face. Sometimes she threatened to hurt herself, sometimes me. For example, I did something she did not like, perhaps reading when I should have been vacuuming, and she made me come home at 10:30 p.m. from my senior prom. I also was not allowed to celebrate after I graduated because of something I did. Manipulation and deception included lies. She turned my family and friends against me. As mentioned regarding the diary, she used things that triggered my depression and increased suicidal thoughts. She pushed whatever she knew would cause me the most pain, often exaggerating problems. She lied about what teachers, friends, and family said about me and constantly accused me of lying for attention. Once, I was stung by a wasp and almost died because I was allergic, but she yelled at me for being dramatic and told my father I just wanted attention. When I finally convinced her to take me to a doctor, she had passed the hospital to go to a cheap clinic. I was severely swollen, my eyelids had split from the swelling, and it took 2 shots of epinephrine and a large amount of Benadryl to manage. I was so sedated I fell asleep sitting up on the doctor's table, then passed out at home, unable to fully wake for a full day. As a toddler, I had so many accidents that they stopped taking me to the doctor's office out of fear she would be reported. These were accidents, not injuries, due to her not paying attention to me, so I would wander and get hurt badly. Story 49. Headbutts. My dad used to headbutt me when I was in trouble. I also got many belt beatings. One time my mom punched me in the face and bloodied my nose. When I called my dad about it, he came home from work and hit me with his belt. Being a kid was difficult. Story 50. Beating me severely for getting bad grades. Broke an umbrella on my back. Hit the sole of my foot with wood until it broke. Punched my head accidentally on the door glass. I did not get stitches, thank God. Hit me to the ground and kicked my stomach until I threw up. Locked me in the basement for having an argument with my sister. Made me sleep outside because I was bad at training in the soccer club. Told me I should not throw away my textbook because when his hands hurt while hitting me, it was a nice break to switch to the book. Story 51. I was 4 years old. My dad came home from work and hopped on his computer to play a video game. He couldn't find his game, so he decided I must have gotten on the computer and deleted it. I hadn't done it. I didn't even know how to turn the computer on, and I told him it wasn't me. He decided I was lying and spanked me. I knew lying was wrong, and I wanted to tell the truth, so he spanked me repeatedly as I begged him to believe me. It seemed to last forever. It never occurred to him that a liar wouldn't take that many spankings just to tell the truth. Finally, my heart breaking, I lied and said I did it. 10 minutes later, as I was sobbing in my bedroom, he came in and said, "Oh, I found the game in a different folder," and then left. I didn't learn my lesson until the next time my parents accused me of something I didn't do and spanked me until I confessed. After that, I always said whatever it took not to get spanked. My parents could never figure out why I was such a liar and didn't trust them. My worst punishment was having to be raised by my parents. Story 52. The one that scares people is that I was withheld food and bathroom breaks for not understanding long division in a timely manner for my aunt. Alternatively, I was forced to clean her entire house and land from the top floor to the basement while on a time crunch because I broke our hamster's enclosure while cleaning it. Story 53. Hard labor. Everything that my father had to do for the day for a period of days I did. It was much worse than grounding, spanking, or taking things away. Story 54. I grew up in a small Pacific island, Samoa, and I was beaten in front of the entire school by the principal with a stick. The reason was that I went for a swim in the nearby river the day before. It was after school hours, but since I was still wearing my uniform, someone reported me, so the following day they made an example of me. Good times. Story 55. Nothing was off the table. Make sure you were out of arm's length if you did not want to be physically punished, but on a good day, you best know the best exit route and be quick about it. There was no saving grace from any of the mental abuse, unfortunately. Story 56. I would get grounded a lot. For many kids, I think that's pretty normal. But the catch is my father was in the military. His grounding meant going to your room for week-long increments, and everything that could be considered fun was taken away. No posters, no books, no toys, and definitely no electronics. I was a kid in the 1980s, so there wasn't much chance of having those. Being grounded for 3 weeks in the summer was brutal. I recall my best friend standing down the hill outside my window, entertaining me silently by jumping around like an idiot, just to keep me from feeling like I was going insane. He was a good friend. Story 57. Reading these and realizing my parents were just incredibly strict but not unfair, manipulative, or abusive. Story 58. I love my mom, and my father is deceased. I remember one time being on report at school, meaning I received a grade for every lesson and even break times. I had to go to the teacher on duty and ask for my grade, maybe 6 times a day. My mom told me that if I got any C grades, grading could be A, B, or C, I would lose my television privileges for the night. I got a C one time and told my mom, saying, "I guess I lose my TV," because I did not seem bothered enough. She punished me more by making me go to bed at 7 p.m. as well. Story 59. My siblings and I were sent to our rooms without Thanksgiving dinner. The reason was that my mother lost her temper with us because we were not cleaning the house to her satisfaction after we came home from church. That was the moment I realized there was something mentally wrong with my mother. Story 60. Slapped on the face once by each of my parents on the same morning, all because of a misunderstanding due to a school project. Story 61. I got caught stealing when I was small. I didn't really grasp the concept of law yet. I was about 7 years old. My dad yelled at me with a very angry face. It was something like this: "How dare you steal? Do you have any idea how wrong that was? How bad this makes me look? Have you learned nothing from the Bible? How hard do I have to discipline you before you stop this behavior?" I was not prepared for that. I didn't steal again, but I also never confided in him again. I probably cried. Story 62. As a child, I would run away from my mother to try to get to the bathroom and lock myself in until she calmed down because she grabbed me really hard by the arm and smacked my butt, which really hurt. Sometimes, she caught me before I made it there, grabbed me by the hair as I was running, trapped it against my arm, pulled my arm, and then smacked my butt. As an adult, she would sometimes stop taking or forget to take her medication and would suddenly slap me, like a teenage girl catfight with body slapping. I was 5 feet tall and weighed 95 pounds, while she was 5 feet 6 inches and obese, so her arms were very strong. She claimed she was defending herself from me, but the only thing I ever did was hold my arms in front of my face for self-defense. Story 63. One time, my mom repeatedly hit me on the head with a hairbrush when I wouldn't hold still. She broke the hairbrush over my head. She didn't say anything and got another hairbrush out. Additionally, she broke a yardstick over my bottom. Belts, spoons, open home slips. Go pick a switch. My dad said, "This hurts me having to do this more than it hurts you," after hitting me with a belt as many times as he felt necessary. Also, my dad said, "Spare the rod, spoil the child." That's what it says in the Bible. Me, as a 30-year-old parent, no YouTube. Story 64. One time when I was about 5 to 7 years old, my mom and stepdad were partying and drinking. I got in trouble for something, but I can't remember what. My mom made me do a wall sit, but since she was drinking, she forgot about me. I ended up crying myself to sleep in the hallway. When she woke me up to go to my bed, I couldn't walk because my legs hurt so badly, so she had to carry me. Story 65. Black family. Single mom since my dad died when I was 12. 6-inch bullwhip. Yes, 6-inch bullwhip. Oh, and my mom was a teacher. Story 66. One time when I was 13, I was throwing a ball for our dog in the yard, and I had a horrible throw that bounced off the window of the house. It didn't crack the glass or damage the window, but my parents lost their minds over it. I couldn't eat dinner for 2 days, and I had to write a 1-page paper about how what I did was stupid. Then they had me stand at the top of our stairs in front of the whole family to read it out loud while they all laughed at me and made fun of me. My sister didn't even know what I did, but she joined in too. I honestly would have rather been beaten. Being publicly humiliated as a kid really messes with your head and self-esteem. Story 67. Anything hypocritical, and then the punishment was worse when I pointed it out and asked for clarification because I legitimately did not understand the difference, not because I was trying to be a smartass. Story 68. Grounded for 2 years for turning in my math on paper that I measured and printed myself because I couldn't afford the fee to have it printed at school. Story 69. Slapped across the face numerous times, spanked, even spanked after getting spanked at school. Dragged across the entire house, hit upside the head with a towel, sent to a corner, sent to my room, simply ignored, grounded from riding my bicycle, and so on. Story 70. When I was a child, I remember being disrespectful to my father because he did not treat me as well as my mother did. My mother tried to explain that he worked almost 60 hours every week, but I just did not understand. The real lesson came when he took me to work with him. I still remember that day as if it were yesterday. I had never worked so hard and sweat so much in my life. To this day, I have no idea how my father maintained his sanity while working for 30 years in such difficult conditions. Heroes are real and they are your parents. Story 71. I had 2 sisters and we fought a lot. My mom would make us sit together in a room and not come out until we were friends. Imagine the horror. We would be like, "Is she insane?" We would talk about her putting us in the room together. How could she? This would go on until we were talking about nothing. Damn her, it worked every time. We never realized this until we were adults. Story 72. My dad was old school Cuban. He came to the United States by himself and had a hard life growing up. If I did something bad enough, I would get la chancla, which translates to a sandal. However, my dad's chancla was one of those moccasins with an inch-thick plastic sole. Getting hit in the face by one of those was painful. Story 73. I was told I would be punished when I least expected it. It was like a two-part situation. I would be paranoid and anxious for days, but the punishment never came. Then, when I finally forgot about it and everything seemed fine, I would get cornered, tackled, and whipped with a belt until I couldn't breathe, before being reminded of what I had done days, weeks, or sometimes even months ago to deserve it. It often seemed to happen when everything was calm and the day was going well. Story 74. On vacation in Ireland, my mom took my brother and me to see Titanic in the theater. I was a little difficult the whole time, though, to be fair, the movie was very long and there was an intermission and I was 7. Anyway, we were driving back to our rental cottage in the middle of nowhere, and my mom finally decided that she had had enough of me. She told me to get out of the car and drove off. She left a 7-year-old on the side of an empty road in a foreign country, in the rain. She did not come back to pick me up for almost an hour. The only lesson I learned was not to depend on her. She would say things like, "I love you, but I don't like you," and "I hope you have children that are as difficult as you one day." She took 2 birthdays away by just pretending they did not happen. Dad did not know because he was deployed both times. There were lots of other things I can barely remember. Now we are practically best friends. She has forgotten all of that and I do not bring it up. Ever. Story 75. The worst experience was in our grade 4 dormitory when we were all punished by the strict supervisor with a belt. The belt would whip around and strike sensitive areas. We had bruises all that week. Story 76. Grounded for an entire summer for an abortion I never had. Mom ran into someone's mother, whom I had not seen or spoken to in 6 years, and alleged that I had an abortion. She told the entire family. It was humiliating and completely wrong. I even offered to go to the gynecologist for an exam to prove my innocence. Mom said I paid the doctor to lie because she is pro-choice. She wondered why I went no contact for years. Story 77. Not me, but a couple at school. They were together for 3 years during school. Her parents found out that she was going out with a non-Muslim boy, and the relationship was ended by the parents. Story 78. I got a borderline grade on a report card. I was grounded from electricity until I improved it. I could not watch television, use a computer, or even turn on the light in my bedroom. I went to my teacher every day and asked for my grade because how can I improve something without knowing where I am starting? Took her a month to get back to me with my grade. It was an 86. I was ungrounded immediately. That is my story of how I was grounded for a month for a B. Story 79. Dad locked me out of the house and told me I was not allowed to go to any friends' houses, and that I had to live outside. I had to sneak to my friend's house through the alley behind our houses and hop his fence. I was not allowed back for a week, and it would have been longer if my mom had not convinced him. Story 80. I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. My 5-year older sister was a genius sociopath, and my 5-year younger brother had to have open heart surgery at age 3 in 1961. My mom was a nurse and ruled with a firm hand. My dad worked in heavy equipment construction, trying to support and cope with all our family challenges. One day, when I was 8, my sister did something nasty to me. I managed to turn it around and make her cry. I was yelling at the top of my lungs because it felt wonderful to have a small victory. This all happened in front of my dad, who was struggling with a cheap extension cord. I am 72 now, and I still have nightmares about being whipped with that extension cord. Story 81. I was locked inside an old outhouse on one of my mother's ex's properties, often for hours. It was infested with spiders. Story 82. I accidentally broke something at a friend's house while a group of us were playing. Our parents were all in the other room drinking and listening to music. When I went out to apologize to my friend's mom, my mother started yelling at me. I remember looking over to see all my friends and their parents watching her yell at me, which is why I didn't see the right cross hit me squarely. I fell back into the wall, then to the ground. I was probably 10 to 12 years old and around 100 pounds. This is one of the few vivid memories I have from my childhood. I also had to work on the friend's farm every day for 1 month to pay them back for breaking what was probably a $20 item. Story 83. Mom knocked my tooth out by backhanding me because I punched a hole in a glass bowl and sink when I was 12. I was tired of doing dishes, but I have 4 more months of them and a knocked out tooth. Story 84. Oh boy. My younger brother and I used to get severely beaten when we were younger. I am 2.5 years older than him. It was usually because my mom had a complete inability to regulate her emotions, and we were both displaying signs of autism that was undiagnosed, which would set her off. I'm now diagnosed with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder at 26 years old. My brother was frequently unable to tidy his room, so my mom would go upstairs and stamp all over his toys to break them, then beat him severely. Once, I remember it was with the end of a vacuum cleaner. I tried to tell someone at school, and when I got home at night, I was hit so badly and told that if social services came to take us away, it would be my fault for breaking up the family. So I never said anything again because I felt I'd be in the wrong, and I didn't know it wasn't normal. That feeling of being so alone and responsible at such a young age was the worst. The number of times I cried myself to sleep every night. I can't remember if I used to get it as bad because I don't remember much of my childhood, but I'm guessing I must have. I always get flashbacks of my brother screaming, though, and I wish I'd done more to help him. It eats me up even to this day, 16 years on. The silent treatment was common. I used to get locked in my room if I was upset or having what was probably an autistic meltdown. My mom or dad would literally stand on the other side of the door and hold the handle so I couldn't open it. From what I remember, if I started banging the door, they'd storm in and the hitting would begin. We were frequently told it was our fault that mom couldn't do certain things, like, if I didn't have you kids, I could have been doing this. All that fun stuff. Mom's favorite insult was to call me an ungrateful cow or a bitch. My dad held my brother's head underwater in the bath once, multiple times, because me and my brother were arguing. He must have only been 7 or 8 years old. My brother was often hit with a belt. His screaming still haunts me. I wish I'd defended him better. If I tried to stop it or defend myself, whether physically or verbally, I would get beaten, or my mom would say such vile things to me. Emotional abuse was pervasive in the household. Even with all that, I'd still say the worst punishment is the battle I've been fighting since. I am diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it hurts because I didn't ask for any of it, and I'm learning I didn't deserve any of it. I'm better than I was, but I've struggled with mental health for as long as I can remember, since I was 9 years old, and with addiction since I was 19. I'm clean and sober now and have recently given up smoking cigarettes. I just wish I didn't have to deal with flashbacks. I get triggered by the silliest, seemingly unrelated things sometimes. I am so unbelievably weighed down with guilt over everything, and that's something I'm still figuring out how to let go. I've worked hard at becoming a safe person for as many people as possible because I never had that growing up. If I ever have kids, I will never, ever lay a finger on them. If you can't get your point across without violence, then you shouldn't be a parent. I smacked you, not hit you. A kid's nervous system can't tell the difference. Same fear. Story 85. I cannot even list which punishment was the worst. Too many of them left me bloody and with scars on my skin that I can still see decades later as a grandparent. Story 86. I was hit in the head by my father, and both my eardrums were blown out. However, I did not need sutures this time. Story 87. My mother disciplined me by swinging a wooden spoon until I was bruised and battered on the ground, and then scratched my back with her nails until I bled. My mother was strict. Story 88. My father was very abusive. He often beat me and my brother, and as the oldest, I bore the worst of it. The worst time involved full-on punches, and he hit me with a broom handle during a fit of rage, breaking it across my thigh. I was 12 or 13 years old. At that time, there was no child helpline to call, and contacting the police did not help. You might ask what I did to deserve this. I took 50 pence from my brother's money box, which he owed me. Because I took it without asking, I was punished. Not to worry, though, 5 years later I fought back and defeated him. Story 89. Only a bed and clothes in the bedroom for something I was not involved with. I was punished for lying because that was considered worse than the thing I did not do in the first place. Story 90. Spankings, usually with a paddle or my father's belt. They were not really spankings because I usually blacked out after 25 to 30 hits on my buttocks or back. Welts appeared right away, bruises a few days later, and it usually hurt to sit for a week or so. But he was just following the Bible. Proverbs 13 verse 24. Story 91. Other than the whipping with the bamboo cane for every little real or imagined infraction, being constantly told that my sisters and I are worthless and that we will all grow up to be promiscuous. Yes, Asian parents are challenging. Story 92. Beat with the belt in front of my friends, but apparently it did not happen when I tried to bring it up. Story 93. My dad made me kneel on salt on one occasion and mung beans on another for at least 30 minutes. It was very painful. Only Asians would understand. Story 94. I was 8 years old, and my dad had just started dating a woman I will call Tammy. One night, my dad was not home, and I was with Tammy and her 4 boys from a previous marriage. I was the only girl. I kept sneaking on my iPad to play Minecraft in the middle of the night. Tammy grabbed me and dragged me outside by the hood of my jumper at 1 a.m. and told me to sleep outside with the dogs. When my dad came home, he was very angry with her. She cried a lot. After that, she never did that again and allowed my dad to discipline me for my misbehavior. Story 95. My dad was an alcoholic when I was a kid, which definitely showed. We lived in northern Canada, so our winters were really cold. One winter, I was at his house during his custody time and was being a brat. So he punished me by throwing me, fully clothed, into an ice-cold shower. Then he didn't let me change out of my clothes and sent me home to my mom in about minus 30 degrees Celsius weather, dripping wet. He has since apologized and recognized that it was wrong. But to this day, I cannot have any cold water touch me without feeling severely ill from the memories. The moment my showers turn cold or my tap water turns cold, I have to shut it off and move away, even if I am still soapy. Story 96. I was a difficult kid and frequently received a spanking. Spankings alternated between the belt and the hand. I made the mistake of letting my younger sister know that the belt hurt less, so it permanently became the hand. My sister tattled on me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.